And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Ryan Metcalfe from Preevue. And Ryan's going to talk about VR, VR being the producer, director, and designer's choice. And then a little bit later on, Ryan has a VR experience upstairs on our exhibition stand. So do go up and have a look at that as well and try the thing out for yourself. So I'll hand over to Ryan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, so I'm Ryan Metcalfe. I run a company called Preevue, which does VR and AR, but mainly VR visualization for generally theatre, but also events and a little bit of architecture work. So VR visualization, if you haven't tried it before, as Jason said, please do come up and have a look at it. It's the most natural way of having a look around a venue without physically being there. In a headset, you're looking around a laser-scanned version of an actual space, accurate to 2 mil, that then when you're in the headset, you can be working for as long as you want without needing to be in the space. In a theatre environment, this is incredibly handy because you don't actually need to be paying for your theatre. You can be on the other side of the world. We have studios set up in about 8 places now where a producer, a designer, director can be there in a headset virtually wherever they want to be, looking around a theatre on a set design that is potentially going to exist in 2-3 years' time. You can check sightlines very naturally, so instead of pulling up your AutoCAD file and trying to figure out sightlines from it, a producer or a designer, general manager, a headset on, and if they want to see a sightline from a particular spot, they literally move to it and go, for my next West End production, this is a £65 seat, and that's signed off. No seats held off sale because of worries about the set design and whether the sightline implications are going to be dodgy when they bring that in. You can actually sit in all those seats virtually, sign that off years in advance. So yeah, it collaborate internationally as well, so these studios are all linked together. So a lot of the work we do is, if somebody is in a headset in London, producer in London, designer or director over in New York, we can connect the two together and they can work on a set design that doesn't exist yet. So whether that's based off a model box that we've scanned in, or CAD plans that we've dropped into a laser scanned venue, they can then be working on it, giving notes, doing everything from programming lighting, designing projection mapping, so we can drop this into D3 or Disguise server and work on the projection mapping for it. And even adjust the set design live in real time, which I'll show you shortly. Some of the projects up on there, things like Bat Out of Hell, Harry Potter, and a lot of new theatres where this has all been used to optimize sightlines, optimize set design before. So what we're gradually creating up now is a library of very, very accurate plans of theatres and event spaces. So part of the process is going in and conducting a laser scan point cloud survey, usually because the plans of the venue itself aren't great, or maybe don't even exist. So the only way we can offer absolute certainty with a sightline, with the only way that I'm confident enough to tell a producer that this is definitely your view is if we go in and do a laser scan, and then we generate the model from that, maintain the accuracy that you get off a point cloud, and then we can guarantee that. So we're gradually now building up this library of West End, London, touring, and Canadian, Australian theatres and other venue spaces that are now on file, so that when somebody comes along and says, I'm putting this next show in the Palladium, in the Dominion, we've got that, we drag and drop the set in, send it to the studio that's probably already set up in their office, and they can take a look. Yeah, laser scanning. So it's becoming a little bit more commonplace in the construction industry. It's still very rare in events and in theatre, but it's an incredibly good and accurate way of getting information of a space. So instead of standing there with your handheld laser measurer, instead of standing there with a tape measure, if you actually go in and set up a laser scanner, that'll take about 1 million measurements a second. So we end up with hundreds of millions or billions of points in a room like this, maybe do kind of 20, 30 scans of it, and then we stitch that all together into a venue, clean that up as a CAD file that can then be into AutoCAD or into our VR system that we've built ourselves, and then people can be working in it virtually. No need to actually be in the space. All we need is 5 hours in a theatre, and then you can spend months working in it without ever being in it. So on here, this on the left is the raw as it comes out of the laser scanner. So that's not colorized. The actual laser scanner itself picks up color, and on the right is how we then process that through into a mesh. So the detail is maintained, but that's cleaned up into a nice CAD model that can then be dropped into, say, AutoCAD Vectorworks or our VR system. So that's the Prince of Wales Theatre in the West End there. So the laser scanner, accurate to 2 mil, picks up color. We go through and take photographs as well to reapply textures and whatnot, make it look as accurate as we can. The idea with our the whole kind of idea with VR is that if we're putting a producer in so they can make decisions in a headset, we want that venue to look as close to the real life thing. We don't want them to put a headset on and start thinking, the walls look a bit weird, the floor looks a bit weird. We want the headset on, and within seconds they're starting to say, this needs to change, this needs to change, because they're focusing on what they're actually doing as if they're really there. So that's why we take a laser scan, that's why we take photographs, that's why we try and have the accuracy that we do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our recent projects, which is Bat Out of Hell at the Dominion Theatre, where VR was used extensively. So they've got VR studios on either side of the pond. The production team is spread out, London, New York, a little bit in Canada as well. So we got involved after its run at the Coliseum. So then it moved to the Mirvish Theatre, the Ed Mirvish Theatre in Toronto, and then back to the Dominion where it's sat now. So we laser scanned the set at the Ed Mirvish Theatre and laser scanned the Dominion Theatre, and then spent about 6 months working with the design team, with the general managers and with the producers on how that shows are going to fit in there, how the set design needs to change, how the sight lines are affected, what should we price these seating structures at. So this is a video of the set designer having, working in VR. So this is the model of the Dominion Theatre. And one of the big issues at Bat Out of Hell at the Dominion is that the stage is going to be very, very high, just because of the rake of the stage. And it meant that the front 4 rows wouldn't have been able to be sold. We set this up so that the designer could actually figure out where the point between lowering the 4-stage apron of that stage and anti-raking the front 4 rows made sense, that then they could sell those seats. So this is him actually moving around, raising those seats up a little bit, lowering the stage a little bit, and signing off that. And if you actually go at the Dominion now, that is what's happened. So we've anti-raked the front 4 rows. There's a platform there, you can stand on it, but it's an anti-rake at the front 4 rows that basically means that those seats can be sold. Financially, that works out that the production can sell 60 more seats per performance, about 30 of which are at full price instead of the restricted views, and about another 30 or 40 that previously wouldn't have been sold at all. This is working on the set design live, so those box fascias that are in there in the Dominion for Bat Out of Hell, they were positioned in VR, so we could drop them in, and then just with keyboard presses or on one of the controllers, they could actually move them live. All of the measurements that are on there can then be translated back across to the AutoCAD plans, and they can say, look, I've moved this 200 mil upstage, fix this on the plan, signed off, done. But making those decisions very quickly and then being able to communicate those back to the producer or director instantly, instead of having the long conversations where you sat there with a producer with an AutoCAD file or with printed plans and trying to explain it to somebody. Something like this, producer on Bat Out of Hell, Michael Cole, can put a headset on and go, I get it. And that was it. And then this is us working on the seating structure. So this was an afternoon with myself and the designer, basically going around and saying, these bright blue seats we've currently got are £70, but actually maybe they should be a little bit less, maybe they should be a little bit more. It's exactly the same box office potential, but we balance it out a little bit. So up in the circle, if you go see Bat Out of Hell at the Dominion, if you sit in the circle, you're probably going to pay a little bit more than you previously would have done, so sorry about that. But if you sit in the stalls, it'll be a little bit less, so it balances out a bit. Things like the car, this is a spoiler alert for the show for those who haven't seen it, the car gets pushed over into the pit, but there's a sightline implication of that because the few seats immediately behind that have suddenly got a big car in front of them for the second half of the first act. And this is the kind of fully finished, rendered, as-built, drop lighting in there, real-time haze, follow spots in there, house lights brought down. This is basically the show as it exists right now. But the accuracy of that venue, it shaved time off the get-in, and it saved time with the planning process just by people being able to, for as long as they want, put a headset and just work in it and have a look around for it and get a feel for the space, instead of waiting for, once the show's left before, then that's when you can get in. Another kind of byproduct of the laser scanning is that we can do very accurate lighting visualization. So there's a bit of a bad reputation around lighting previs with the likes of WYSIWYG. And it's usually because the plans were wrong to begin with. That's why the visualization doesn't work well. So if people have had a bad experience with something like WYSIWYG, it's usually because they've loaded plans of a venue that were wrong. So when they turn up and plug it in, of course, it's all wrong. But if we laser scan it, we get very accurate positions of all those lighting fixtures and very accurate venue as well. So we can actually go in and pre-program it. So one of the projects we did was the What's on Stage Awards at the Prince of Wales. And usually, like any kind of awards do that you're doing in somewhere like a theatre, where you're in on the Sunday, you have a whopping 2 or 3 hours in the morning to do your lighting design, if it would be that. And usually you end up not, you can't express what you want to do creatively because you're very limited with time. With this system instead, it allowed that, the lighting designer had about 3 weeks working with my lighting chap, programming a show. So it was an actual theatrical show using the fixtures there because they had 3 weeks in a virtual venue, turned up on the day, plugged in a USB, updated presets, it was good to go. So that's a byproduct that the laser scanning can actually provide as well. A little bit about where visualization's going. We're doing a little bit of work with the HoloLens. Should I just play this video here?
Hello, this is
Oh God, can we lose my voice? I don't want to talk over myself. Thank you. So this is the HoloLens system. So with this, it bridges the gap between real life and VR. So you can wear a visor system that will then track something to real life, whether it is an exhibition space, whether it is a set design. We're doing a little bit of it with the construction industry as well, where you can put a BIM model over the top of an actual built building and walk around and see, basically, have you built it properly. But this is just a theatre example. It's worth noting that the grid that's drawn on stage there has nothing to do with the tracking. That was simply left from the production beforehand. So it's got IR sensors built into it that as you move around, it's about 60 hertz, I think is the refresh rate of it, is actually bouncing off, measuring, and doing essentially what the VR headset's doing, but all built into it. So then you can see your set design built there. Advantage of this is that if we're working with a producer and they say, I want to see what my show looks like, and we go, brilliant, we'll do a laser scan of your theatre. Quite often their office is 3 floors above it, and they can say, I can just walk down the stairs to have a look at my theatre. So instead of the laser scan, this is an incredibly rapid, iterative process of where we can actually put them in a headset, just a HoloLens, and they can walk around their theatre and go, this is what my set design looks like. Take it off, make these changes, instead of the whole process of scanning it in and sending them a file over. And again, this is at real world scale, so that set is exactly where it should be. You can take a seat in real life instead of taking a seat virtually. And as you move around that theatre, that set will stay tracked there. So walk into a space like this, you could track your exhibition spaces, or your event design, your corporate event. You could see exactly what that's going to look like in the space, sign it off in a headset, and then when it's built, it should be as accurate as that was. That's about it. I think I'll pass back over. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ryan.